standard dry fly hook, and I got tan thread. Actually, it's a little sandy dun is the color. And just going to bring that back to basically the end of the shank, laying right below the barb of the hook. It's about a good proportion part of that. What I do is that I kind of count it. You guys anybody tie with a lot of Zealand in their flies at all, or heard of it, right? So it's a very glistening, speaking light reflective color, right? So I'm gonna put a tiny little shuck on the back of this.
Micro Zealand, or whatever?
Yeah, it's the Micro Zealand from Blue Ribbon Flies, and I've probably had this pack for 15 years. I'm just chewing away on it, and I'll show you why I've had it for so long. Is that I'll take what I think is right for a good clump. I'm going to exaggerate a little bit on here, and get out what I need. And it's kind of like, if you guys had daughters and you got to get gum out of their hair, it's a little bit like dealing with that till you get what you want. And I'll come in here and I'll cut off what I think I need. Is that picking it up? But what I like to do is, it's probably a little bit more than I need for this fly. But I will somewhat get it manageable. And you're always going to sacrifice a little bit in the beginning. You guys notice how I just kind of put this on the outside edge here and just slip this up like this? That's a great trick for like CDC, for crystal flash or any kind of material you're putting in. Bring it down. Now the first set, I'll leave a little bit extra. Now if I kept tying a fly, this is what I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to trim this part off right here, right? So I keep thinking I'm throwing it on the floor like I'm tying it to shows. So this has probably saved me more money than any other thing else in my tying arsenal. I got one that I keep at the desk at home and one that I keep on the road with me. And I'll take the tape and I'll come back here and I'll kind of stick it in the end like this. And I'll just leave it there for, and I'll trim this off. Now, proportion wise, I want a shorter shuck than say like a mayfly. All I want is a little something in the back there that might represent if it was a diving caddis, air bubble coming back in, or if it was an emerging caddis, like the ectoskeleton or whatever's coming off the back end. So I'd say about 2/3 of the hook shank, kind of on the shorter side. Trim that off. Now what I do with this is I'll fold this over, but I'll leave one edge kind of still sticky. So if my lamp's sitting in the room, I'll stick it on the lamp hanging down, and then now I can go back. I have a good blunt end right here, or close to it, and I can slip it back in and just keep tying off it and cutting off it each time as I go along. And instead of it ending up on the floor, your dog walking around with it, all that good stuff, you have it. You can do that with any materials, but that saves you a lot of money because stuff flies away. You know, so, and it's just a fact of life. I put a rib through here, and what I really like is it's similar to crystal flash, but it's a little bit more. It's mirage right here, accent flash. It's opal. I like this kind of color where it's got a little bit more of the greens in it instead of say the pink and the pearls. I don't know if that's picking it up.
Yes, it is.
But that's what and it's a little bit more thicker and a little bit more plasticky, I guess would be the termination. But I'm not really looking for it like in crystal flash where I'm putting it on a bunch and making scales and all that stuff. All I want is just to put a little rib through it, just enough to, I'm not even going to turn it like, you know, you count 5 times on the mayfly or all that stuff. I'm just going to go maybe about 2 times, maybe 3 at the most when I dub this body. So I'm going to, once again, here's that trick where, see where I slipped it up on the far side of the thread and I can pull it down to where I want it. Or if you don't care about material expense, and, you know, sparing no expense for you guys, of course, I'd just trim it off and go on the next one. I don't have to be like the Zealand where I'm going over and over again. So I got that hanging off the. So a couple basic colors I like. I like this lighter olive right here, number 11, and this is Hairtron. And I also like the darker green between the two. And somewhere in my bag at home, I'm sure I have tan. So, but pretty much I use, 90% of the time I'm using this number 11 olive, pretty much most of the time, and it's Hairtron. Hairtron is like hare's ear mixed in with a little bit of Antron and mixed together. It's got more of a sheen, but also you're going to have a little bit of that hare's fiber sticking out from the natural hare's ear, right? And I kind of want it dubbed a little bit on the shaggy side. Like if you look at Gary LaFontaine, a lot of his flies that he makes, he fuzzes them all out, makes them really, he doesn't even stack the deer he puts on them. The more ratty looking, the better he thinks it fishes. So, and caddis are kind of a weird little beast in different stages of its cycle. So, if you notice how I dub, I'm sitting there and I'm using my index finger and my left hand to go up because this is going to go clockwise. So what it'll do is once I get it kind of started, it'll almost kind of self-roll itself, tightening it up, doing it that way. And I'll kind of make a nice cigar taper in here if I have to. I got to blow out my package here after I don't know how many years I've had this dubbing. It's kind of making almost like a football slash cigar. So proportion wise, if you notice, this is probably, I'd say that's about 60% of the body right there, and we got 40 here, right? So in this fly, I call it a 60-40 fly. I like to either divide it up by fractions, which I wasn't very good at school, or I'll do it in the percentages coming back from here. Here's 100%, here's 50%. So if we're going to go this way, it's 40% here, and then there's 100% there, so there's about 60% of the body is in there. Can you get, is it picking up kind of how fuzzy it is?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's what I like. I don't even, like, if it drives you crazy that's a little too long or something, then trim it out. That's your own thing, but the fuzzier there. So I'm just going to take 1, 2, 3 wraps coming through, that's it. And you see, I didn't really do a tight dub either on that. You notice how soft that was? Just to let you know, this doesn't have to be a super fine painted body that we're doing here. Now the fun part of it is you can use, I think, what did I put in here, brown or tan CDC on there? I did brown, oh I did brown or tan, so I got tan CDC, and the Trout Hunter stuff is my favorite CDC. I know it's a little expensive for a bag. You can buy a little bag like this now for about $5 or $6, or you can get this big bag right here that's about $17, $18. The advantage of this is that, I'll show you why. I don't know if that thing's going to pick it up, but when I tie, birds of a feather stick together. Remember that saying, right? Well, a lot of these feathers are different consistencies here. You got one that's kind of thin, and then over here you got one that's kind of dense, right? And this one's just off the charts. I mean, if I was tying a fly with this thing, it'd be for like one of the jeans of deals there when I was tying. So what I try to do is I try to kind of find a couple feathers that I think that marry up with about the same consistency of each other. Is that picking it up there?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, you got to judge it, length of fibers, how much is in a certain area. So as I'll demonstrate later, they're cupped too. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up. It's cupped a little bit.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put right on top of each other, just like spooning right there. And
Back to back, so they're cupping away
back,
from each other.
cup down like this. Yep.
Oh, cupping towards each other.
other.
Okay.
Now when I do the mayfly coming up, or the other things, they're going to be away from each other, but it's hard to tell, but they're literally like that. Now I want to clean this off, but I don't want to clean off too much, because I actually use all the waste and what's going on going forward with the fly. So now here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and kind of knead them up in my hand. And if I had my light going up, I'd hold it up, and if one got out of the way, is that picking it up? Like, see how one's taller than the other?
Yep.
So I'm using my thumb and my index finger to even up the tips. See that?
Well, yeah.
So they're evened up. And then I kind of knead it again, and if it's not the way that I want it, I can always go back and do it again until I get the tips completely lined up. And now I'm going to tie the CDC feather on, and it's just like tying an elk hair caddis wing on. If I tie it on straight up, this stuff's gonna roll towards you guys, right? So I'm actually gonna kind of tilt this into my quadrant, and the wing is just gonna maybe go past the bend of the hook a little bit. And I'm gonna roll this thread up, you see that, and it'll bring it up top. You see that right there? And I'll kind of maneuver it. It's almost soft like a sponge a little bit. Go a little shorter on that. I actually got a little bit more material on this than I wanted. Alright, now you see how I advanced the thread towards the front of the eye of the hook and then I went back, right? There's like way too much material on this thing. Clean that off. Alright, cool. And I'm not trimming that off, right? I'm gonna leave that on there for a reason. Now, the next thing is I'm gonna top this. Now, typically I've been using partridge. Now, does anybody notice what the deal is with partridge? Partridge is going through the roof, right? I mean, a skin for a partridge now is getting close to $50 for a good one. And the ones at $35 really aren't that good. You know, they're not as dark and deep as you like. And let me tell you, if you ever see one in the shop somewhere for about $30 that looks killer, buy the dang thing, because they're few and far between from what I found. Plus, there's a lot less shops that have them. So they're becoming quite a premium now. So I have a substitute. And being a whiting dude, Whiting Farms, they've come up with a 4B feathers, and it's bigger, better, bargain bird. And I think this thing costs you roughly about $20, probably less than that. And it's a pretty nice, you know, and there's been plenty of feathers around that are that way. They're only been smaller though when you buy them in little patches about like this. But my God, this thing is so big that I can actually kind of tie a pheasant tail nymph, believe it or not, with these fibers almost like going through it on the bigger ones. And then the smaller ones, which are really dark and robust, I've been using them substitution for partridge. So when I'm tying all my copper johns, I've been using this. When I've been tying a bunch of just general nymphs or little fuzzy nymphs for the lake and stuff, I've been using this. So anywhere where you got partridge and you don't want to spring the big bucks for a partridge, go with the 4B from Whiting, man. You'll save you a lot of money. You can tie a ton of stuff. So anywhere you want a pheasant tail real quick, but you don't want to do the legs because pheasant tail slips out a lot, kind of pain in the butt. These things bind down real good. Just substitute it. It's a dang great color right there to match it.
Hen saddle?
Huh?
Is that a hen saddle?
Yeah, it's a hen saddle. And they call this one a variant. I don't know, I call it brown. But, you know, they're not those. But I've been plucking on this dude probably for 3 years now, and I haven't made a dent in him. And like I said, I've used them for all kinds of good stuff where I gotta put legs on my nymphs or all that. So anyways, it's pretty good cheapo. And I've done a few soft hackles with it too. So I mean, like got down here on the little ones and like, hey, that's cool. So anyway, so let me grab one of these. I'll go with one of the bigger ones, you know. So instead of partridge, I just want, and really what I'm looking for here is kind of like a little bit of diffusion. You know what I'm saying? Remember I said Gary LaFontaine liked to use deer hair? He liked the fact that the way it looked, not so much of this deer hair. So he was going after the fact that it was a diffused look to the fly. So I'll take a few fibers like this and pull those off. And then what I want to do is I like it to just extend a little. I literally put it on top and just a little bit past that wing, so it's a little bit longer than the wing that I set on there. Just something to break it up top there. That's all I'm doing. In fact, if you want to spread it out a little bit, you can do that too. And I think it's a pretty good alternative to partridge, to be honest with you, the way it looks. And it has some pretty good, you know, because you're always looking for those real dark feathers on the partridge and the cape. Well, here you got them all and everything, so you don't have to go through a couple $50 capes just to get feathers like that. All right, so next up is we're going to hackle the fly. And in here I use ginger. A lot of times I use the ginger bar ginger, like that right there. And I've also, hey, when I get lazy, I use Cree too as well. Either of them work, so it's up to what you got. The ginger works just as good as anything else. So size this up. So the size of the hackle, I would say I want it about maybe, not maybe 2 times the hook gape, but maybe about a gape and a half if you're going to add it. Forgot about that. So. Alright, so let me get that, execute that. And then a really good tip that someone taught me was that you can glue sandpaper inside your hackle pliers there.
Who told you that?
And dang, if it doesn't work, just beautiful, man. I mean, look at that. It'll slip out, Mr. Casimir. And I'm not putting a whole lot of wraps in there. I'm just kind of going forward and locking her off. Now, once I get to this point, no slacky dacky here. I'll do another safety turn. Then I lift everybody up, and I'll put some turns in front of that eye right there. You see that? Going forward. Now I can get rid of our hackle there. Okay. So it looks like a mess, I know. Well, we'll try to straighten it up a little bit here. Whip out our handy dandy whip finishing tool. And for the old dudes, yes, I can whip finish by hand, but it would obliterate this fly with my mechanic hands that are like literally like that sandpaper. Rip up the thread like it's nothing, so we use the whip finish when I can. Pop the thread out there. I do not use no head cement on my CDC flies, let alone most of my dry flies, because it goes right into the material. So if you do a real good 5-turn whip finish, confident in it, I haven't had a problem with them coming undone. So, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm turning this towards me, grabbing all my excess junk, and just like an elk's hair caddis, I'm going to cut a little bitty head going off the front of that, if you see that right there. Then I'm going to come on the bottom and trim out the hackle so it'll lay flat, so I just basically got the legs hanging out on each side. And that, I don't think it gets any easier than that to tie a fly like that.